Hello everyone, welcome to sqadia.com. I'm Hina Khan and today we are discussing gunshot wounds and explosion deaths in this lecture. So gunshot wounds basically refers to the firearm injuries and this branch of forensic medicine is also known as the ballistics or the wound ballistics. So the ballistics strictly refers to when we are talking about the motion of the projectile in the air and its effects on the tissues. And the wound ballistics are particularly referring to what are the characteristics of the wounds that are caused by these projectiles. So it's basically the discussion that is going to be carried out over here in this lecture. In the first section, we'll be discussing the muzzle injury in particular. So first of all, we'll be discussing the mechanics of muzzle injury, what are basically the tissues damaging that can occur after the impact of the projectile on a human body, and its entrance can cause a lot of damage. Now, what are the kind of wounds that can occur in such an individual, and what are the complications relating to these muzzle injuries? So we'll be discussing the types of weapons. Basically, when we are discussing ballistics, it's very important to know the types of weapons out there and what are the differences in their mechanism of injury. What are their internal characteristics that can alter the mechanism of injury after the impact takes place. So it's again very important, and the fact is important for a pathologist. So as a forensic pathologist, you should be interested in the type of the injuries that can be caused by such projectile motions and after the impact of the projectile with the tissue. So secondly, in the second section, we'll be discussing the shotgun contact wounds in a very comprehensive way over here. We'll be discussing the muzzle impression. So if it is in a contact state while the shotgun is made, then what kind of an injury can we observe in such an circumstance? And then the carbon monoxide. What is the action of the carbon monoxide in such muzzle injuries? It's again very crucial. Now, the contact wounds over the bone. So if we have close contact with the bone and the tissues are in close contact with the bone and the muzzle injury occurs, what will be the characteristics of such an injury? That will be discussed over here in the second section. The features of the shotgun wounds are again discussed in detail over here, depending upon the ranges of the gun. Then in the third section, we'll be discussing the wounds from the rifled weapons. Again, it is very important to know the range of the gun. That is, the contact wounds have different features over here, and then we have a back spatter phenomena. That means that the tissue characteristics will be found inside the gun. Even the blood and some amount of the tissue can be found in the gun. But that is going to only happen when the close contact takes place with the tissue. So the abrasion collar is again another phenomena. These are some of the terminologies relating to the shotgun wounds. And whenever we are describing a shotgun wound, what are the characteristic terminologies and what does they mean? It's again very important. For example, the grease collar. It's again very important. Then we have the tattooing phenomena. So all of these will be discussed here in this section. Moving on, we'll be discussing the bullet wounds in bone. So the effects of the bullets on the bone are described over here. And in the fourth section, we'll be discussing particularly the exit wounds. We are done with the entry wounds, the characteristics according to the ranges. And then we are describing the exit wounds over here. The shotgun and the rifled weapons exit wounds have different characteristics, and we'll be discussing that over here. And the estimation of the range of the discharge, it's again very important, and we'll be discussing that over here. The smooth bore shotguns and the air gun injuries. Different weapons produce different kinds of injuries, and we'll be discussing them over here, depending upon the mechanisms that the bullet passes on when it enters the tissues. In the fifth section, we'll be discussing the deaths from the explosions in particular. So the mass disasters are again very important. There can be explosions, and how can we, but personal identity is the most important factor while we are discussing the explosions. So we'll be discussing that over here. The nature of the explosive trauma. We'll be working on the fragments of the bones over here after the explosion. So what are the autopsy signs to look for after the explosion trauma? It's again very important. And the autopsy in the explosion deaths, how is it carried out on the fragments of the bone and not the whole body is found in such explosion deaths. So I hope you want to learn more about these gunshot wounds and the explosion deaths. So do watch the other sections for this lecture as well.